Welcome to Access. This is where we discuss the most riveting issues of our times and bring together subject matter experts to gain deeper insights from them. Today, we will be discussing a topic that is quite interesting but also quite saddening. We have been joined here with Mr. Ziya Salam, who is an Indian author, literary critic, journalist, and a social commentator. And throughout his career, Mr. Salam has worked as a journalist for different newspapers and has been working as features editor for The Hindu, North India edition for over 16 years, and serves as an associate editor at the Frontline magazine. And to his credit, he has several books. And one of which we will be talking about today. Sir, thank you so much, first of all, for joining this conversation. It's a
Thank
pleasure to
you.
host
But
you.
there's one small correction. I left
Sure, sure,
Frontline
sure.
about 2.5 years ago. I'm with the Hindu only.
All right. So, as you rightly mentioned, right now you're with the Hindu only. Sir, you came out with this latest book of yours, Being Muslim in Hindu India, and it's quite, it's jarring at the same time for people who go through that sort of reality, but also intriguing to know how that feels because these are the notions that were talked about when Pakistan India were in the process of gaining independence, and the sort of narratives that were happening that we don't want to be the perpetual slaves and whatnot. And this is the sort of talk that we heard in or that we've read in history books. But now, today, in this age when we've come so many years after independence and a country that was known for its sort of vibrant secularism, what motivated you to pen this book? But most importantly, what does it mean to be Muslim in India then and now?
See, it's a very simple thing. I've done this book as a sense of responsibility towards my Muslim brothers, towards my country,
Mm-hmm.
most importantly towards posterity. When the next generations come, they should not think that whatever was happening at this time, Indian Muslims refused to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very difficult time to be a Muslim in India today. At the same time, we have to raise our voice. As
Absolutely.
I've often said to people, even a mother doesn't suckle the child unless the child weeps.
Hmm.
This book is an attempt to draw attention to what it means to be a Muslim in contemporary India today. Sim- at the moment, to be a Muslim in India is to be a part of a besieged community where everything is under scrutiny, from what you wear to what you eat to where you pray, where you study. Everything is scrutinized, and justice is always not delivered. Today, we are having this unfortunate reality where a Muslim sleeping in his bedroom
Mm-hmm.
is not safe. A man walking on the road with his cattle is
Mm-hmm.
not safe. A man traveling with his family by train, he is not safe. Our mosques are not safe. Our madrasas are not safe. This is the most challenging part of being a Muslim in India today. It has never been as challenging since 1947. We have had our times where things have not been exactly very peaceful, but by and large, there has been communal harmony in India. And what Jawaharlal Nehru envisaged in 1947, when India became a sovereign country after the departure of the British, there has been overall a general communal harmony between different communities, barring incidents like sad incidents like 2002 or 1984, or
Mm-hmm.
some violence in certain pockets of the country. By and large, people were not discriminated on the basis of religion. This is for the first time that India's largest minority is being singled out by members of the right wing Hindutva groups, and no relief seems round the corner.
Sir, it's quite interesting. A group that was banned from India about three times is in so much power now that no one is able to sort of downturn the sort of tide that they're picking up.
They are the ruling government today. Our
Exactly.
prime minister, BJP, they are all from the RSS.
Exactly.
RSS was planned by Sardar Patel and later on also. But today, RSS controls virtually every sphere of life. be it political or social or cultural or even for Hindus, religious. It's the all powerful body in the country, and no minister at the center can claim that he does not respect RSS.
So very rightly pointed out, because you also echoed a little bit of what the Nehruvian dream, what we often hear about. And today, when we see the Modi Yogi dynamic happening in the recent celebrations of the Ram Mandir temple, we heard largely a lot of comments like 500 years of weight has been lifted, and the constant sort of echoing of historical or twisted historical claims over the land and the people. How do you think has that impacted the entire Indian society on ground? What we see on the international forums has very little to do with what's going on inside India. How do you think that is going to impact the people, the society, and what's to come? Because here in Pakistan, we went through our fair share of Islamization or perhaps rigid policies, and we have been facing the impact of that as well. But it seems India did not learn from its neighbor Pakistan, if I may put it that way.
Yeah, I do agree with you, but it's not a question of 500 years. Our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he assumed office 2000, in 2014,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing he said was, we are putting an end to 1,000 years of slavery.
Exactly.
So for the BJP and its associates, the long period of the so-called Muslim rule was a time of slavery. That is the period of Delhi Sultanate and the
Mm.
Deccani Sultans and Mughals and so on. They regard that period to be a period of slavery. No matter that the Upanishads, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, all these sacred granths of Hinduism were translated into Persian and other Indian languages at that particular time. And there was a renaissance in the field of art and architecture and
Exactly.
literature, particularly during the age of the Mughals. For
Mm.
them, the only thing which is the defining point is your religion. Nothing else matters. They have a very simple slogan of Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan. They
Okay.
work accordingly. And when the Ram temple was constructed, Ram Temple inauguration rather took place on January 22 this year. This inauguration was with an eye on the forthcoming elections in India because
Absolutely.
the temple is not complete. And according to Hindu rules, Hindu scriptures, that is, no temple can be consecrated or deity installed over there until the temple has been completed. The
Hmm.
religious leaders of Hindus, the four Shankaracharyas in India, they had all opposed the January 22 consecration. Yet
Okay.
the government of India went ahead and installed the deity and did all the inauguration programs associated with it, flouting the advice of the Shankaracharyas. Clearly, it was a political matter, it was a political decision. And to that extent, the government was hugely successful because in North India, in Central India, a vast majority of Hindus rallied behind Modi. And he
Hmm.
was able to sell his story of justice after God knows how many centuries of Muslim occupation.
So, very rightly put, the optics of how this entire event was celebrated, inaugurated, really PM.
To reinforce the othering of Muslims, that
Absolutely.
you don't yeah. You can
Absolutely.
live here at the mercy of the majority community,
Mm-hmm.
but you can expect same rights or same political or social rights and security and so on and so forth. That is why we had this sorry spectacle at Khan Market in Delhi, which is supposed to be the most elite part of the city, where all the saffron flags were put up and
Exactly.
for 4 hours a day, Hindu bhajans were played in the
Mhm.
market on the public audio. And it was the same thing with the residential colonies across Delhi, UP, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, etc. The idea was to drown India in the
Hmm.
color saffron, so that whenever Republic Day came 4 days later with this tricolor, the tricolor was hard to find on the streets of Delhi, though 26th January, our Republic Day, had just passed. That is a sad reality today.
Sir, very rightly. And while that is a sad reality, it's also quite interesting to see how BJP is utilizing these optics for its own electoral gains. Of course, it comes at a cost of what it's doing to the largest minority in its country and other minorities as well. We saw the Manipur riots come in, and it seems that there has been no particular resolve towards that as well. But more on understanding, what sort of instances have you compiled in your book for the audience who would like to perhaps have a read? Could you provide a few more?
Lynching in the book,
Yes, yes.
beginning lynching of Akhlaq in September 2015
Mm-hmm.
on to 2023. And in all the cases, or about 90% of the cases, the victims were Muslims who were
Hmm.
dairy farmers and who were accused of cow slaughter without any evidence.
Mm-hmm.
The men were beaten on a public square with, with hockey sticks, iron rods, and so on until they died,
Mm-hmm.
or until they were almost close to death. And in no case what did the Prime Minister of India condemn such lynching, nor
Exactly.
did the Prime Minister, Home Minister, or the Chief Ministers go to the house of the victims. For
Hmm.
the first time probably in recorded history, we had the case of criminals recording their crime on
Absolutely.
their mobile and uploading it on internet, knowing that they have their political masters who will back them.
Hmm.
And their faith was not misplaced because we had one union minister going to Dadri when one of the men accused of killing Akhlaq, Ravin Sisodia, when he had died and his villagers refused to cremate the body. He wrapped Ravin Sisodia's body in India's national flag.
Hmm.
What was the message he was trying to send? The national flag is used for a soldier who dies fighting an enemy country on the frontier. The idea, the message was that if you have killed a Muslim in India today, you have killed an enemy, so you're worthy of that honor of the body being wrapped in the tricolor. Something similar we saw in Jharkhand, where another union minister was on hand to garland convicted men of lynching,
Mm-hmm.
and he distributed sweets to them, garlanded them. More recently, we had a very tragic case of Bilqis Bano of Gujarat. She was criminally assaulted by 11 men in 2002 pogrom. Her 4-year-old daughter had died in the same attack, and her mother and her sister had also been murdered in front of her eyes at that particular time. Finally, she knocked at the doors of judiciary at various levels
Mm-hmm.
and got the rapists and the murderers life imprisonment through the Supreme Court. But the BJP government in Gujarat released them before time after getting due permission from the center. And when these convicted murderers and rapists were released,
Hmm.
again they were all garlanded. Young men touched their feet to seek their blessings, and they were treated to box of sweets until four well-meaning lawyers got into the picture, and they petitioned the Supreme Court all over again. And then the Supreme Court in mid-January asked these men to surrender, and they were sent back to jail. That is the kind of reality I have talked about in the book. The book also talks of sustained attacks on Muslim identity,
Right.
particularly the way Muslims have been targeted.
Hmm.
In 2020, had a Northeast Delhi violence where 50 odd people died across communities, majority of them Muslims. At that time, 19 places of Muslim worship were attacked. 17 were mosques, 2 were dargahs.
Hmm.
And after that, more mosques have been targeted in Delhi. Just over last 4 weeks, 5 weeks or so after the release of the book, we had this case of age-old Sunheri Masjid near Parliament House. The local municipal authorities planned to demolish the mosque, saying it is an impediment to the flow of traffic. It was only when an RTI found out that there was no huge traffic on that road and there's a
Hmm.
public outcry that demolition was, so to say, put off. Just 2 days back on 30th January, 3 days now, an 800-year-old mosque in Delhi in the Maroli area was demolished, bulldozed just before Fajr without any evidence of the mosque being in encroached area. The local municipal authorities did claim that the mosque was in an enclosed area, and
Mhm.
the area belonged to the DDA, that
Okay.
local development authority. But the
Mhm.
fact is, the DDA came up after India's independence. The mosque stood there for more than 800 years.
For so
It
many years,
was
yes.
it was from the Delhi Sultanate times. So we understand the mosques are not safe today, and we are also getting to hear all those calls about the Gyanvapi Masjid in Varanasi,
Hmm.
where two Hindu worship has been allowed in the cellar of the masjid. And there's a lot of tension in the township today, and one is hoping for a better resolution.
So you have very rightly pointed out the systemic cleansing that is happening with regards to anything that highlights the Muslim culture, the Islamic religion, and anything across those lines. But more
India is in
importantly,
denial
sir,
of Islamic past.
exactly, the Islamic past, the land's history, as a matter of fact, what it is, what it has gone through, what it is all about. But what I'm absolutely stunned to know is that in such repression, sir, your voice is out there through your literary work, through your writing, through your book. I would really like to know what sort of instances have you personally faced, when it comes to speaking and for your sense of responsibility to your people
Have
in the country.
congratulated me for this book, Being Muslim in Hindu India, and they have called me brave for writing it and all those things. Whereas the
Exactly.
reality is it's not about being brave. This book is more out of desperation.
Yeah.
Even if you die, you want to die fighting.
Hmm.
You want to raise your voice. You don't want to just surrender to what might be, God forbid, inevitable. So, this is an attempt to highlight what is going wrong with our country and not just with Muslims. The attempt by the government is to erase the contribution of Muslims from our history. That is why
Exactly.
even townships and cities with the so called Urdu sounding names like Faizabad, which have
Hmm.
nothing to do with the Muslim religion, they
Yeah.
have been renamed. The idea is to tell the next generation that Muslims are just invaders, they did nothing good. And that
It's
is why
it's
all the
like a
mosques are being
distortion of
targeted one by
history.
one. Today, about 20 mosques are facing petitions in various courts. 20 mosques of UP, Delhi, Madhya Pradesh, and Haryana,
Hmm.
where claims are made that it was a temple at a particular time, going against the Places of Worship Act of 1991, which clearly says that whatever the religious character of a particular place in 1947 on
Hmm.
15th August,
Okay.
that particular character will be maintained forever. But the
Hmm.
courts are very happy to admit the petitions against these mosques. And I obviously talked of invisibilization of Muslims in the political arena, with the
Exactly.
largest political party, BJP, not
Hmm.
giving tickets to Muslims, but even the opposition being shy of giving tickets to Muslims. They've reduced the number of tickets to Muslims by up to 30-40%. And even a party like Samajwadi Party, which has in the past prided itself on a combination of Muslims and Yadav Hindus for winning elections.
Hmm.
In the 2022 elections, the party took the Muslim vote for granted, but hardly ever projected any Muslim from its stage during election campaign. And it goes on everywhere. And you see, I've also talked of bulldozing of Muslim properties, Muslim establishment. There's one particularly sad case of a man in Khargon in Madhya Pradesh. He
Okay.
was accused of pelting stones at a Hindu religious procession,
Hmm.
and his shop was demolished. When investigations took place, turned out the man doesn't have both arms. He cannot even lift a glass of water to drink. He cannot feed himself. And he was accused of being a stone pelter, and his shop was demolished by the local authorities in Madhya Pradesh simply because his name was Wasim Ahmed. In another case, a teenage boy in Madhya Pradesh, Muslim boy, was again accused of spitting at a Hindu procession. And then the local administration got down to demolishing his house, his three-storied house in Madhya Pradesh. Not only that, his house was demolished to the accompaniment of music.
Okay.
It was like the country had conquered a new territory and he was celebrating.
Hmm.
Some 5 months after that, it was found that the police had actually just filed a fake case And the man who was supposed to be a witness, he told the truth to the media that he was just asked to sign on blank sheets of paper. But the idea was to show the Muslims their place. This young man is out on bail, but what about his house? Who will reconstruct his house? Much like the masjid in Delhi, which was demolished on 30th January, not a little trace of it was left. There is a qabristan also, or there was a qabristan also close to the masjid, and there
Mm-hmm.
was a madrasa attached to it.
Okay.
All of it was bulldozed, and the trucks were on hand to take away all the gravel and everything from the side so as not to leave any evidence. If this can happen to a mosque, which is recorded in history for over 800 years, imagine the plight of a common Muslim on the streets of India.
Sir, I'm also curious since you bring the media here. My question then to you, as someone who also frequently writes and is part of that landscape, how do then these media outlets with different biases cover the issues, and how does it influence public perception, especially when we know
A large part
political.
of our media is what we call as Godi media.
Yes,
They
yes.
just, they just parrot the government's line.
Mm-hmm.
They have forgotten all the elementary principles of journalism,
Mm-hmm.
of cross-checking any claim, investigating any claim. Their idea is to vilify Muslims 24/7.
Okay.
The kind of headlines they choose for their programs, the kind
Mm-hmm.
of debate they choose for their evening programs every day. It is always aimed at showing Muslims as the villains of India. Media forgot all about its responsibility as a pillar of democracy back in
Absolutely.
2015. Today, whatever truth comes out in India is courtesy little portals like Scroll and The Wire, etc.
Yes,
They
sir.
have a limited reach, but they are doing an honorable job.
Very rightly put, sir. And but of course, I'm curious again because with all of these issues coming together, and you've as you compiled them in your book as well, I am then interested to know what are the sort of historical or socio-economic factors that have contributed to this perception of persecution, and how do you think it will continue to intersect with the political decisions? Because there's an understanding that the BJP might have a landslide election victory once again. And why do you think the other opposing parties are no longer challenging such a brutal notion where one a party is being vilified, and that is, of course, the Muslims in India? Why is no one else able to come forward and sort of speak against this sort of ideology?
See, the opposition parties are living in fear
Okay.
of enforcement directorate, other investigating agencies,
Mm-hmm.
and all this is real fear, and also the perceived fear of losing the Hindu vote if they speak for justice for Muslims. I
Okay.
think it's very disrespectful
Mm-hmm.
towards the sentiments of our Hindu brothers and sisters that just because you speak up for a mosque or for a Muslim who has been lynched, then the Hindus won't vote for you. This is a travesty because the common Hindu even today is secular. That is why we see the BJP getting not more than 40% vote until now in any of the elections.
Okay.
Earlier it was 33%, now it is 37%. But a vast majority of Indians are still opposed to BJP's idea of India. And they follow what we euphemistically call the idea of India, which is about shared past, pluralist living, communal harmony.
Sir, my very conclusive question for you, and I understand that what seems like a very difficult process to undo, but how do you foresee any potential change in where this is headed? Because naturally, in the world of global politics, India is rising, but internally, what's happening in India is not only destabilizing for India, but for the region as well. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the perception of the world. The reality is Indian economy is in doldrums.
Absolutely.
80 crore people do not have 2 meals a day. The government has to provide them free 5 kilograms of rice and wheat every month.
Okay.
The government congratulates itself on this.
Mm-hmm.
But a country where 80 crore people, that is more than 50% of the people, do
Hmm.
not have enough food on their table any day, is obviously in a bad state. Our unemployment rate is at a 45-year-old high.
Oh,
And
wow.
the 10 years of the Modi government, the rate of growth has been much lesser than the rate of growth during Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's 10 years at
Mhm.
the helm of affairs. The only thing which the BJP is able to sell to the masses is Hindutva ideology and the othering of Muslims and Christians. That is how they win elections.
So, but very lastly, why do you think it continuously keeps getting picked up? Why is it that people continue to support such a heinous ideology? I've always been very curious about that.
They arouse baser instincts among Hindu brothers and sisters and drive home the point, as what they say in Urdu or Hindi, Hindu khatre mein hai. Hindus are
Okay.
in danger.
Existential
And
threats are invoked. Okay.
and the gullible Hindus are often very keen to buy that kind of perception. They don't realize that we have the Prime Minister of the country who is Hindu, we have
Mhm.
the President of the country who is Hindu, the Chief of the Army Staff, the Chief Justice of India, all
Mhm.
of them are from the community. Still, why do they have any reason to be afraid or insecure? Today, for the first time since independence, we don't have a Muslim minister at the center. We don't have a single Muslim chief minister in any of the states. Yet, the mantra at the street level is Hindu khatre mein hai.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time for this discussion. What your book is doing is absolutely highlighting, and as you rightly say, it is a desperate call for what is going on within India. And I hope that a lot of people read and learn and point out, and also come to sort of understanding what's happening within the country and are able to challenge the norms that the BJP government is currently setting. With that being said, thank you so much for taking out the time. It was a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this episode of Access.